In a fading memory, a kind woman tells a young red-haired girl named Edith to never be discouraged and to never yield. The woman, bruised and scarred, gives her final advice. Forget the honor of your dead parents, because it no longer matters. The young red-haired Edith looks up with wide, golden eyes as a comforting hand rests on her head. The scene shifts to a magnificent, sun-drenched mansion, a picture of staggering wealth and power. Years later at a tea party, women gossip about a Marchioness Julia and the difficulty of cleaning up her predecessor's messy reputation. A woman in a purple dress smirks, cattily calling the previous Marchioness a lewd and extravagant woman, as the woman accuses the late Marchioness of seducing the eldest son, Matteo. The red-haired Edith calmly pours hot tea right on her head. Oh my! A blast of dark energy erupts, sending the gossiping women flying backward with a terrified "Kaya!" The drenched woman stammers in fear as Edith stands over her, coolly stating that the woman reeks, and the tea helped wash her off. A fleeting, warm memory surfaces of a young Edith embracing her loving mother. The other ladies stare in horror as Edith thinks to herself that she's lost her mind again. Her eyes blazing with fury, she condemns them as lowlifes, roaring that even rats know better than to insult the dead. She makes a new vow. From now on, she will only think about how she feels. Her resolution is cut short as a hand brutally grabs a fistful of her red hair. A man with a mustache throws her to the ground, coldly telling Edith that she's lucky. He sneers that her pretty face is the only thing that's kept her from being thrown out long ago. Edith reflects that without her looks, neither she nor her mother would have ever carried the family name Reynolds. In a flashback, a younger, pink-haired Edith resents her mother for bowing to that man instead of seeking revenge. She couldn't understand if the Reynolds' wealth was worth submitting to her own father's enemies. The memory continues, with the man cruelly asking a young Edith if she knows how much money it took to raise her. He grabs her face, sneering that she'd better earn her keep now that her mother is dead, but she fights back, biting him and screaming. Behind a closed door, his furious shout is followed by the sharp sounds of a vicious slap, then another. The door opens to reveal Edith collapsed on the floor, the man standing over her in disgust. He storms away, cursing her for being a damn stubborn wench. Back in the present, Edith cries, realizing too late that her mother never had any real power. She finally understands that her mother had no authority, as a gentle vision of her spirit offers comfort. The aftermath leaves her alone, sitting in the dark silence of a dusty storage room. Night falls, casting the imposing mansion in shadows. A voice from the doorway summons Edith to dine with the master, leaving her shocked and suspicious of the sudden invitation. A maid rushes to help her up, telling her she needs to get dressed properly for the sudden occasion. As she follows the maid, Edith thinks about how, ever since her mother's death, things have been different. With a heavy clunk, a pair of grand, ornate doors swing open before her. Now elegantly dressed, Edith takes her place, her expression a mask of calm composure. At a lavish dinner table, the master stands and addresses his family, who are already seated. A closer look reveals his family, a woman and two young men, all look completely bored and irritated. The master turns to Edith, his voice slick as he comments that her mother was also quite beautiful. He continues his creepy compliments, telling her she inherited only her mother's prettiest parts. Gesturing to a feast, he invites her to sit and eat, an act of kindness she hasn't seen in years. Standing by the table, Edith remembers the truth of her life since her mother passed away. Until now, he'd only ever tossed her scraps, fit for a dog. She can't help but wonder what's going on. The master answers her unspoken question with a wide grin, announcing that he's celebrating. He locks eyes with her across the table, speaking her name with a chilling finality. Edith. A cruel, triumphant smile spreads across his face as he prepares to deliver his news. He drops the bomb. Her marriage has been arranged, and Edith freezes in shock. The woman in blue scoffs in disbelief, wondering what kind of madman would marry a lunatic like her. The master clenches his fist under the table, thinking to himself that it must be a very rich man. A single tear traces a path down Edith's cheek as she sees a dark, menacing silhouette in her master's place. Her eyes widen, a storm of fear, shock, and dawning realization brewing within her. Her betrothed is none other than Grayson Riley Myers, third in line to the throne and a duke known for stealing women's hearts. But instead of despair, a slow, wicked smile spreads across Edith's lips as she remembers one final, crucial detail about him. The scene opens under the warm glow of an opulent, golden chandelier, setting a tone of immense wealth. Elsewhere, a woman in a blue dress is having a complete meltdown, screaming that it's ridiculous for someone named Grayson to marry Edith. Edith, on the other hand, watches the drama unfold with a sly, knowing smile. Back at the dinner table, the woman in blue has shot up from her seat, her outburst disrupting the entire meal. As the chaos erupts, Edith calmly cuts into her food, thinking to herself, with an air of disbelief, "No way." In a stark visual, she and a blonde man are shown separated by a chasm, signifying there was never a shred of interest between them. Lifting her glass, she wonders why on earth this powerful man would ever agree to marry her. But as she takes a sip of wine, a confident, almost predatory glint in her eyes suggests she already has a plan. Bam! The doors are thrown open with a crash, interrupting her thoughts. The woman in blue stands in the doorway, marching up to Edith and demanding she reject the proposal. She sneers, asking if Edith really thinks she's good enough to handle Duke Myers or his family, but Edith's sharp glare says it all. Edith coolly shuts her down, telling her it's none of her business, and that she and the Duke will handle things themselves. The woman gets right in her face, mocking her for acting like a duchess before she's even met the man and calling her pathetic. With a smirk that could cut glass, Edith retorts that it's better than being a meddler. A flash of energy sends the other woman stumbling back in shock. Looking down at her stunned rival, Edith finishes her comeback, saying at least she looks less pathetic than her, calling her out by name, Lillian. Enraged, Lillian lunges forward, hand raised to strike. But Edith is faster, grabbing Lillian's wrist mid-swing with a powerful grip. Lillian is left sputtering, completely outmatched. Leaning in close, Edith reveals a dark suspicion. She never believed her mother's death was an accident, and she implies someone in Lillian's family was responsible.
Lillian scoffs, viciously insulting Edith's late mother, saying she was only kept around out of pity and was nothing more than a woman who sold her body.
As she storms off, Lillian smugly suggests Edith should be more grateful to them.
Edith is left alone in the dark, watching her go, the cruel words hanging in the air. A memory surfaces of a rumor about a dancer who caught Duke Meyer's eye, and suddenly Lillian's desperate attempt to stop the marriage makes a twisted kind of sense. Wham! Yet another door slams open as the scene shifts dramatically. Left alone with her thoughts, Edith's expression turns somber. She reflects on the tragedy of unequal marriages, recalling her own mother, Eliana, who was trapped in a loveless union. She reminds herself that Duke Myers isn't just a noble, he's the king's third son, beloved by everyone.
In contrast, she sees herself as the daughter of a so-called witch and a lowly country baron, a world away from his royal status.
Looking out the window, she remembers her mother's desperate dream of revenge, a dream she never had the power to fulfill.
With newfound resolve, Edith vows to herself that she will not be like her mother. She will act differently. She stares out at the starry night sky, her path now illuminated by a cold, clear purpose. A bittersweet memory returns, her mother standing with a young Edith, pointing towards the window.
Her mother's voice echoes with a final piece of wisdom. No matter how dark it gets, there is always a light somewhere.
So wherever you are, her mother's memory urges, never lose sight of your own light.
Edith gazes at her hand against the night sky, a silent promise forming. Her fingers tighten on the window frame, her resolve hardening into steel.
A brilliant purple aura ignites around her as she declares her new mission: to follow her own light and seize the authority she deserves.
The scene shifts to a breathtakingly handsome man with silver blonde hair, looking every bit the part of a powerful duke.
An older man assures him that Lady Edith is quite beautiful and will suit him perfectly. The two men stand together in a grand hall, the elder figure clearly trying to sell the match. The Duke, Grayson, smirks, turning to his companion with disbelief. "You think that insane woman and I are a good match?" he asks, his tone dripping with sarcasm.
A flashback describes the public image of Lady Edith Reynolds, the beautiful, gentle youngest daughter of a prestigious marquis.
But the narration reveals the dark rumor that followed her mother's death, that she fell into madness from grief. Grayson sighs, thinking to himself that he'd always expected to enter a marriage of convenience eventually.
His blue eyes narrow with a cold, calculating look. He turns his back on the older man, walking away as he processes the situation.
He admits a painful truth. He's always known his father's affection for his children was never equal.
His two older brothers were the children of the king's first wife, his one true love.
He, however, was born from the second queen.
She was a woman his father married purely for political gain, and his feelings for the two women couldn't have been more different. He reflects that while this truth used to hurt him as a child, now he barely feels a thing.
Grayson reflects that being born a prince came with a life of luxury, so it's only right he fulfills his duty.
With a calm and resolute expression, he looks up and agrees to obey the command. Suddenly, a voice from outside a grand estate shouts his name, "Grayson!"
Inside a lavish study, a man with dark hair and glasses confronts him, demanding to know if the rumor about him marrying a madwoman is true. Grayson notes internally that the rumor has even reached Edward, a friend who normally couldn't care less about society gossip.
With a soft tap, he sets down his pen, thinking that someone must be deliberately spreading this rumor.
Edward completely loses his cool, accusing the woman of using Grayson's weakness to force the marriage and demanding to know what it is, but Grayson just tells him to calm down. Rubbing his temple in exhaustion, Grayson thinks to himself that maybe a little sympathy isn't so bad.
A romantic vision appears of him tenderly embracing Edith, a stark contrast to the political turmoil.
The scene shifts to a bright, sun-drenched garden filled with lush greenery and a beautiful gazebo.
Edith sits alone in the gazebo, peacefully sipping her tea.
She looks up, a picture of calm elegance amidst the flowers, far from the madwoman rumors. Life has improved since the engagement. Grayson posted guards to keep the Reynolds family out, and the staff now treats her with care.
A subtle, knowing smile plays on her lips.
Her quiet moment is interrupted by the clatter of footsteps as a maid rushes towards her, calling out.
The maid excitedly announces that a letter has arrived from the third prince.
Edith's eyes widen slightly as she takes the letter, confirming it's from Duke Myers.
Holding the pristine envelope, she feels a pang of anxiety, praying it's not a notice to cancel the marriage. She opens the letter, her face a mask of confusion as she reads its contents. When her maid asks what the Duke's letter says, Edith vaguely mentions it's about the plan. But then she breaks into a radiant smile, correcting herself. He's asking her on a date for tomorrow, leaving her maid speechless.
The maid is completely floored, wondering how they even met and if they've been seeing each other in secret.
Edith's smile fades as she rereads the letter, her expression turning serious and contemplative. Her maid watches her with concern, sensing the gravity of the situation.
Edith reassures her maid with a gentle smile and a comforting touch on her shoulder.
In a quieter, more serious moment, she confides in the maid, calling her the only ally she has in this treacherous mansion. The maid is moved to tears by her lady's trust and vulnerability. Edith's expression is knowing as she says she's well aware of the horrible things people are saying about her. The vicious rumors swirl that she's a witch, a promiscuous woman clinging to a man for his weakness, just like her mother. With a firm tap, she places the letter down, thinking to herself that she doesn't care what any of them say. Like a master strategist moving a chess piece, she resolves to use this marriage to secure her own power. Her eyes burn with determination as she vows to become a witch, a villainess, anything to avenge her parents. Elsewhere, the Marquis stands in a grand hall, practically giddy as he greets his future son-in-law. He sidles up to Grayson, fawning over how quickly he arrived and asking if he was that eager to see Edith. Grayson shuts him down, coolly reminding the Marquis that the wedding hasn't happened yet, while thinking the man's only excited because the salt tax was cut in half for this deal. Cutting to the chase, Grayson states he'd like to meet Edith, and the Marquis eagerly agrees. The Marquis shows him to a parlor, promising that Edith will join him shortly. Grayson waits alone in the opulent room, a solitary figure in a golden cage. His expression is cold and unreadable as he waits for his infamous fiancée. But it's not Edith who enters, it's a handsome man with black hair, dressed in a sharp red jacket. The man walks straight up to Grayson and gets right to the point. Why do you want to go through with this marriage? Grayson deflects, telling him to ask the king, but the man pushes back, demanding to know his real intentions. With a clenched jaw, Grayson insists he's just following orders, which only infuriates the other man. The man glares, absolutely seething at Grayson's passive response. Pointing an accusing finger, he calls Grayson out, saying he never does anything he doesn't want to do. A faint, almost mocking smirk appears on Grayson's face. The man runs a hand through his hair in frustration, muttering that an unexpected person has appeared. Grayson smiles, telling him he must be misunderstanding because he always accepts the duties assigned to him. Fed up with the non-answers, the man slams his hands on the table in a burst of anger. At that moment, the scene changes to Edith, who makes her grand entrance looking ethereal in a flowing pink dress.
Grayson sits with a cold, detached expression as the silhouette of another man stands before him. In a flashback, a brown-haired man is hailed as a hero, while a thought bubble reveals the scandalous secret of his marriage to a disgraced family's daughter. Back in the past, Grayson coolly asks about the fate of the daughter from that scandalous union. Returned to the present, Edith wonders why the black-haired man is there, suspecting he's come to gossip about her. She watches, confused, as Grayson subtly covers his mouth, hiding a reaction from her. Getting straight to business, Grayson rises and invites Lady Reynolds to leave with him, and she agrees. From the parlor doorway, the man in red watches them walk away, clenching his fist in silent frustration. Peeking through the door, his face is a mask of pure fury as he watches them depart. The scene shifts to the ornate wheel of a carriage, beginning their journey. Inside, Edith and Grayson sit in a heavy, awkward silence. Edith maintains a stoic and composed expression, gazing out the window. Grayson sits opposite her, his handsome face unreadable as the carriage ride continues. A dark memory surfaces of cruel voices mocking someone's beast-like eyes, calling them disgusting and creepy. The memory continues with a terrified person cowering, thinking that looking at those eyes would be suffocating. Startled, Edith is suddenly snapped back to the present. Having arrived at their destination, Grayson formally offers his hand, asking her to step down from the carriage. He offers her a small vial, a thoughtful gesture that catches her by surprise. They stand outside in the bright sunshine, ready for their date to begin. As they walk, Edith remarks on the nice weather, and he quietly agrees. Concerned about the strong sunlight, she graciously offers him her parasol. In a surprisingly chivalrous move, he takes the parasol and holds it over both of them. Edith glances up at him, a subtle shift in her expression. He walks slightly ahead, leaving her to follow in his shadow. She worries that if this distance continues, she'll be left to navigate the next part of her plan alone. Tap, tap. Her heel suddenly catches on the uneven stone path. With a gasp, she loses her balance and pitches forward. Wham! A strong hand grabs her arm, stopping her fall instantly. Her parasol clatters to the ground as she's pulled to safety. It's Grayson, who has caught her just in time, his arm firmly around her. He looks down at her with a calm, steady gaze. Edith looks up at him, her eyes wide with surprise and embarrassment. Oh no, she panics internally, convinced he now sees her as a clumsy fool. Playing it off with a charming smile, she leans into his hold and lets out a soft ah. A bitter thought crosses her mind. Unlike others in her past, like Mateo, he won't blame her for stumbling. Instead of scolding her, Grayson bends down to retrieve her fallen parasol.
He hands it back to her, apologizing for his lack of consideration, completely taking the blame.
Stunned by his kindness, she reassures him that it's fine. They finally arrive at the grand entrance of a building, the mood between them shifting.
Looking at his back, she begins to wonder if there's more to him than she thought.
He walks ahead, and she contemplates the real reason he asked her here.
He stops and finally tells her the truth. He arranged the date to address the various rumors about them.
Edith insists she's fine with the gossip, but Grayson cuts her off sharply, declaring, "I'm not fine."
As a servant bows, Grayson announces that he's cleared the entire third floor for them. Elsewhere, a young woman with blonde hair and a purple dress looks up from her meal, her expression filled with worry. As they walk into the crowded establishment, whispers immediately start, with onlookers asking, "Who is that woman?"
All eyes are on them as they ascend the main staircase, the subject of intense gossip. From the top of the stairs, Edith glances down at the crowd below, her eyes glinting with cold resolve.
Tsk.
She clenches her fist tightly by her side.
She reminds herself to stay calm and play her part, knowing one wrong move could cause him to cancel the marriage. Together, they walk into a grand, empty hall, leaving the prying eyes and whispers far behind. Edith skeptically wonders if rumors that have already spread can really be settled with just one date. Like a perfect gentleman, Grayson takes her hand and guides her to her seat at the table. He politely pulls out her chair as she sits down, her expression thoughtful. An exquisite steak dinner is served, setting the stage for their tense conversation. Seated across from him, Edith looks on with a serious, questioning gaze. Grayson remains perfectly composed, gesturing for her to enjoy the meal he's prepared. He maintains his calm and collected demeanor, ready to begin their discussion. Leaning back, Grayson cryptically remarks, "If you see it that way, even better." The camera pans over a lavish spread of food, including golden fried chicken. Edith cuts to the chase, demanding a reason for all this, but he coolly asks if there needs to be one. She presses on, insisting there's always a reason for everything, whether it's for love or for personal gain. Grayson thinks to himself that she's surprisingly self-aware. Surrounded by the decadent meal, Edith quietly waits for his real answer. He swirls his wine, admitting that this marriage holds benefits for both the royal family and her marquisate. Taking a sip of water, Edith agrees that connecting the families benefits her father, but trails off with a pensive look. Grayson picks up on her detached tone, noting how she refers to her father simply as the Marquis. With a confident smirk, he leans back and challenges her to guess the real reason.
She stares back, realizing instantly that this is a test.
In her mind, she sees the deal being struck between the king and the Marquis, wondering what the king hopes to gain from his 5 children. A silhouette of the royal family reveals Crown Prince Cassius, the second son Leopold, and Princess Mallory, all from the first wife. The narrative explains that Leopold is ambitious and relies on the power of his wife's family, the Duke of Cortez. With a flash of insight, Edith asks if this marriage is meant to keep Grayson out of the royal power struggle. A warm, genuine smile spreads across Grayson's face at her deduction. He looks out the window, admitting that while it's natural to seek power through marriage, he can't understand the appeal. Edith points out that if he truly wanted power, he wouldn't have married someone as powerless as her. Taking a sip of wine, Grayson delivers a heavy truth,
parental love isn't distributed equally among children. His words strike a chord, and Edith's eyes widen with a flicker of recognition.
She softens, acknowledging that everyone has complicated family situations that are difficult to discuss.
"It's not hard for me to say," he says, cutting into his steak, ready to bare his soul. He recounts how his mother, a common maid, caught the eye of his father, the crown prince, and they married against all opposition. But their love story turned tragic, as the result of their marriage led to bloody sibling conflicts. His father's insistence on the marriage caused his own brothers to try and strip him of his title, staining the throne with blood. A flashback shows a blood-soaked shard of glass, hinting at the violence his father endured. Tap. Grayson sets his cutlery down, explaining his father kept the throne and had a happy family, but that happiness was short-lived. He looks directly at Edith and drops a bombshell, and that woman became my mother.
Grayson explains that his father doesn't hate him, but can't show him the same affection as his other children. With newfound empathy, Edith says she understands the king's circumstances. She realizes the king, having already killed his brothers to secure the throne, is now willing to marry his son to a crazy woman to protect the succession. Edith knows the king is aware of her precarious position within the marquisate, where she is merely tolerated, and he's also aware of the marquise's insatiable greed for money. "That's why I'm a suitable match," she concludes, understanding she's the perfect, powerless pawn. Grayson glances at his watch, signaling it's time to go. He stands, announcing that while their talk isn't over, the theater performance is about to begin. Confused, Edith thinks to herself, "We're breaking the schedule?" The scene shifts to a sunny garden as Edith calls out to him. They now stand together outside in the beautiful, sunlit garden. He explains this public appearance is to reassure the king and the people, as he himself is not well loved. Edith adds that because of this, everyone will undoubtedly oppose and worry about their marriage. Walking towards a grand building, he declares he will never challenge his brothers, solidifying his role as a non-threat to the throne. As they enter, a socialite gasps in shock, and the whispers and stares begin immediately. As they make their grand entrance, the crowd parts, their eyes fixed on the mysterious couple. Now in a private box, Grayson lays down his terms for their arrangement, asking her to promise a few things to keep their marriage peaceful. "So, a contract?" she asks, the single question hanging in the air as her jeweled shoe sparkles. From the opulent balcony, she gazes down at the theater, the weight of their deal settling in. High above the audience, they are a spectacle for all to see, their every move scrutinized. Grayson drops the first bombshell. He has no intention of making this marriage last a lifetime. She looks away, her mind racing as she calculates that this partnership will likely bring more pain than profit. To sell the act, he declares that until the wedding, they'll go on casual dates like a normal couple. He then lays out a timeline for intimacy, holding hands, and by their fourth meeting, a kiss, leaving her blushing and utterly speechless. "Of course," he says with a smirk, reminding her they have to look like lovers, even if it's just for show. She's completely baffled, wondering what on earth his real plan is with this sudden, unexpected script. Her mind reels. She expected a business deal about her duties as Duchess, not a script on how to kiss him. She glances at him, still flustered,
while he sits there looking as cool and confident as ever.
He explains his motive. He can't let their marriage look forced or unnatural to the public eye. In his mind, their wedding must be a picture of mutual affection, a union of two people who truly want it. Resigned, she lowers her head and agrees to his terms, understanding what's at stake. He coolly states he will play the part of an ordinary lover, setting the stage for their performance.
Then comes the next stunner. After the wedding, they'll spend a week together on their first night to prove their relationship is solid.
Wah! The thought of a first night sends her into a blushing panic. That was definitely not in the job description.
He leans closer, casually dismissing her shock by saying there's nothing shameful about a husband and wife sharing a bed. He asks her to just accept it, his charming smile doing little to calm her racing heart. Her panic is quite visible now. She just wants this painfully awkward negotiation to be over, feeling completely out of her depth. Her hand grips the armrest, her knuckles white as she tries to keep her composure. A stark visual highlights the emotional canyon between them, even as they sit side by side. Noticing her distress, he apologizes, admitting he failed to consider her feelings in all this. Wow! Suddenly, thunderous applause erupts from the audience as the show begins, interrupting their tense conversation. As the performance ends, he rises, suggesting they continue their talk at a place called Evergreen. Edith looks down, a shadow of melancholy crossing her face as she prepares for the next round of negotiations. The scene shifts, and they're now seated across from each other at a quiet, sunlit table. Her mind latches onto a new, terrifying implication of their arrangement: a child. She reasons that in a political marriage, producing an heir is a natural, expected duty. Grayson cuts straight to the point, asking if she has a problem with the idea of having a child. It feels strange, she admits. Questioning why he'd want an heir from a temporary marriage meant only to survive a power struggle. She presses further, asking why he'd want a child with her when he could have one with a future real wife. He simply hums in thought, a sly, unreadable expression on his face. His answer is chillingly practical. Whether he remarries or not, a child is a political necessity. She stares at him, horrified by his cold, detached view of family and fatherhood. In a flash of painful clarity, she realizes exactly why he agreed to this and what she truly is to him. It all clicks. This marriage is just a tool to placate the king and his brothers. And in his eyes, she's not a partner, but simply an obstacle he has to manage in an unwanted union. She sits in stunned silence, the full weight of her position as a disposable pawn crashing down on her. A faint tremor runs through her hand as she struggles to process his callous words. She forces a pained smile, trying to hide the hurt as she lifts her cup. In her heart, she remembers her desperation, resolving to accept any treatment just to escape her own family. But even so, she clenches her fist, affirming to herself that she is still human, with feelings that can be wounded. And right now, she feels that wound very, very deeply. The mood shifts, as delicate as falling leaves in autumn. Grayson backpedals, clarifying that he doesn't see a child as a mere tool, but that he worries others will. Looking down, she quietly accepts his explanation, though the damage has already been done. The thought of a child, a being she'd never even considered, being used as a political pawn because of her is horrifying. Edith reflects that her marriage to the Duke will never be a lifelong commitment. Sipping her drink, She resolves to achieve her goal and then file for divorce. Back at the table, the couple sits in the quiet aftermath of their intense negotiation. As his cup clinks, Grayson realizes with a pang of regret that he made a mistake. He admits to himself that he never meant to be hurtful and has never apologized to anyone in his entire life. Yet within just a few hours of meeting Edith, he's already said sorry 3 times. He realizes he apologized without thinking, simply because he felt sorry for the woman trying so hard not to cry. Getting back to business, Grayson tells her she only needs to attend the most important social events. Edith looks up, asking what exactly her duties will be as the Duchess. She sits patiently, awaiting his list of expectations for her new role. What does a typical Duchess do? She clarifies, seeking a baseline for her performance. He simply tells her that her primary duty is to behave properly at all times. Taking a sip from her cup, she looks at him with newfound understanding and says, "Oh, I see." A smirk plays on her lips as she thinks his conditions aren't so bad. In fact, her mad woman reputation might be an asset. She recalls past torments, realizing that if he's willing to tolerate her madness, she can get away with a lot more. With a confident and radiant smile, she fully embraces the terms of their deal. As the scene shifts to her family's mansion, she reminds him to guarantee her rights as promised. The evening comes to a close under the soft glow of the estate's lanterns. Standing before the grand gate, he formally addresses her as Lady Reynolds one last time. With a charming smile, Grayson suggests that when they next meet, they should call each other by their first names. Stunned, she can only think one word: name. A bead of sweat rolls down her cheek as she processes his surprisingly intimate request. In her mind, she admits that while she hates being called Reynolds, the thought of calling him Grayson is a lot. With eyes closed, she quietly practices saying his name, letting the sound of it sink in. He bids her good night, and her eyes widen as the reality of their new relationship hits her. He adds that the evening was a pleasure for him, and a genuine one at that. She flinches, completely caught off guard by his sincerity. As her carriage awaits, Edith watches it, the sound of hooves echoing in the quiet night. She touches her wrist, a deep blush spreading across her face as she's left with her racing thoughts. The mansion stands silent as the carriage pulls away into the darkness. As Grayson stands by his own carriage, an attendant asks if a forgotten item should be sent to the lady. He walks back toward the brightly lit entrance of his home, lost in thought. Inside, an attendant greets him, inquiring if his date with the infamous lady went smoothly. A maid steps forward, offering to put away the parasol he's holding. Grayson dismisses her, stating he'll take care of this one himself. He enters his study, inviting someone to come in. Tap. An older woman named Mrs. Helena Windsor, his former nurse, enters with a tea tray. Mrs. Windsor immediately questions Edith's character, asking if a sensible woman would cause a scene at a royal party. She recounts how Edith allegedly stomped on a girl's foot so hard it broke, calling the act utterly vulgar. The story shifts back to Edith's somber expression, hinting at the truth behind the rumors. Grayson reflects that it's a dangerous weakness for a man to be unable to refuse a woman's demands. He muses on her intelligence, impressed that she understood his discomfort from a single cryptic comment.
He remembers her holding the parasol, cheekily claiming the stars were stinging her eyes. A warm smile spreads across his face as he gazes out the window, recalling her cleverness fondly. Suddenly, the memory shifts to a darker time as a young girl's hand is violently grabbed.
Suddenly, the memory shifts to a darker time as a young girl's hand is violently grabbed. In a flashback, a younger Edith is dragged away by a cruel-looking woman, screaming, "Let go of me, Emma."
The woman, Emma, sneers back, promising to let go only if she behaves.
Edith glares back, thinking that this cruel treatment is what Emma wants, not what she deserves. The narrative reveals that Emma, a maid, always took sadistic pleasure in tormenting Edith and another girl. It turns out Emma, a commoner, reveled in the power she held over a noble she could abuse at will. Edith's thoughts drift back to the past, her mind fixated on one name, Emma. In the memory, the cruel maid Emma is seen dragging a young Edith down a dark hallway. The flashback sharpens, focusing on a specific cold night just last January. The face of an older woman appears, twisted in shock and horror at the memory of that evening. Edith recalls the exact moment the news arrived, delivered by an apprentice priest reporting her mother's accident. She remembers how several people were sent out into the cold to identify the body. Among them were her brother, Wyatt Reynolds, another man named Mateo, and a woman called Lillian. And bringing up the rear was the grim-faced old woman, her expression as cold as the falling snow. Back in the present, the old woman snaps at Edith for bringing up a painful memory that's already a year old. Edith feigns innocence, claiming she was just struck by a sudden curiosity. She remembers her utter powerlessness back then, her reputation ruined by tabloid lies, while her father's spies watched her every move. She couldn't even send a flower to her mother's grave. But her mind is racing, wondering why, of all people, Lillian and Emma were the ones to go to the scene. The woman dismisses her questions, telling her to worry about keeping the Duke's favor instead of digging up the past. Edith follows her down the long hall, the distance between them a clear symbol of their relationship. The scene shifts to a tense family dinner, presided over by the smug-looking Marquis. Across the table, a beautiful red-haired woman named Julia shines with an air of practiced elegance. Edith, however, steels her resolve, vowing to hold on to Duke Myers until her family tastes the same hell she has. An overhead shot reveals the full, tense gathering at the grand dining table. Her brother Wyatt leans in, warning her to behave obediently or risk losing the engagement. "Yes, brother," she answers meekly, hiding her true feelings behind a mask of compliance. Her other brother, Mateo, watches the exchange with a look of silent disapproval. The Marquis explodes at Mateo, furious at his lack of enthusiasm for his sister's fine marriage. Wham! Mateo slams the table, firing back that there's no way Duke Grayson agreed to this willingly. Wyatt calmly tells his furious brother to sit down before he makes things worse. Fed up, Mateo storms away from the table, leaving the rest of his family in stunned silence. The Marquis chokes back his anger as Julia coolly sips her wine, utterly unbothered by the drama. Edith calmly takes a bite, thinking that her father must finally be realizing the truth. He has to know that Grayson Myers, a brilliant and powerful man, can end this marriage at a moment's notice. After all, Grayson isn't just anyone. He's a man of incredible renown and achievement. He's a political prodigy who was settling international disputes while still a teenager. A man with that kind of power would never let himself be forced into a marriage by anyone, not even the king. The Marquis sinks into thought, the weight of this realization finally crashing down on him. He looks directly at his daughter and asks if Duke Myers shows any real affection for her. Edith pauses, a thoughtful expression crossing her face as she considers how to answer. She recalls her conversation with Grayson. He cared about her usefulness, not her feelings. Her father scoffs that beauty isn't enough, but Edith just smirks back. Of course, I'm aware. Suddenly, Julia glares from across the table, demanding to know why Edith is looking at her that way. Before a fight can break out, the Marquis roars at Julia to stay out of it. His fury silences her completely, leaving her looking shocked and hurt. Edith twists the knife, coolly remarking, "You must be jealous, Julia." The tense scene dissolves into a shimmering memory of how this all began. It started 4 years ago, when a man named Count Seymour brought his daughter Julia into their lives. Thanks to the massive dowry she brought, Julia immediately became the Marquis's favorite. She quickly began acting like the lady of the manor, even daring to treat Edith's mother like her personal servant. But Edith found a secret entry in her mother's diary that changed everything. Her mother had discovered that Julia's family was nearly bankrupt, their valuable mines almost completely depleted. It was a secret her father, blinded by the lure of gold, had never even suspected. And now Edith understood why her mother had to keep so many secrets to herself. Tap. Her father's voice cuts through her reverie, telling her to think very carefully. With a grim look, he declares that this engagement is their lifeline, and she must never let it fall apart. Her cold, determined eyes narrow as she pieces together her father's true intentions. A chilling thought strikes her. Strange. It's as if the Marquis only cares about the wedding, not what happens after. The memory of the tense family dinner fades, replaced by the grim reality of their plotting. The Marquis stares ahead, his expression unreadable as his sinister plan takes shape in his mind. Mateo confronts him, asking what he means and warning that a divorce would bring their family shame, so she must be careful. A faint, knowing smile plays on Edith's lips as she understands the depth of their deception. In the mansion's grand hall, Mateo desperately questions his father's plan to send Edith away, worried she'll say something foolish to the Duke. The Marquis coldly assures his son that she won't get the chance to speak. He then reveals his true monstrous intent. Whatever secrets that wretch is hiding, she won't live long enough to speak them. His meaning becomes terrifyingly clear as he adds, "She'll be dead before that." The plan is laid bare. At the wedding toast, Edith will be given wine laced with the deadly Flarin poison and die on the spot. It's a toxin so potent she won't even be able to utter a single word before it kills her. They'll frame a woman secretly in love with the groom as the culprit, exploiting Duke Myers' popularity to their advantage. The Marquis gloats that neither their family nor the Duke's house will be able to hold their heads high after the scandal. He corrects Mateo's suggestion that they might gain from Edith's death, insisting they will definitely gain more. With a cruel grin, the Marquis lectures his son. "Listen well, Mateo. This is how you use people." Meanwhile, someone peeks through a cracked door, secretly listening to the entire conversation. Back in the present, Edith walks down a brightly lit hall. The weight of what she overheard finally crashes down on her as she clutches her chest. They intended to kill me. She stands alone, her back to the window,
lost in the overwhelming shock of their betrayal. She stumbles against a wall, the reality of their plot washing over her.
Gasping for air, she whispers in disbelief, "They wanted to kill me."
Huh. She realizes their plan was never to let her live as a duchess, or even to use her as a spy. The Marquise's cruel face looms in her memory as he points an accusatory finger. Tears stream down her face as she admits, "I never expected them to try to kill me." She was a fool. Even her mother, after 15 years with them, ended up dead. A single tear falls as she admits that while she never considered them family, she had allowed herself a tiny bit of hope. Now, kneeling in the hall, she sees herself for what she was, foolish and pathetic. She gazes out the window, her expression filled with a profound and lonely sorrow. Suddenly, she remembers her mother's final, desperate warning. Trust no one, Edith. Never take a smile in front of you as genuine. Looking at her reflection, she thinks, "I understand, Mother." A cold resolve settles over her as she vows, "I won't trust anyone." Bursting with newfound fury, Edith declares she'll sort through her mother's belongings herself. Her father scoffs, telling his servants to let her do as she pleases, convinced she'll give up when the work gets too hard. A bright, fiery energy erupts around her as she embraces her new mission. Overwhelmed by the task ahead, she leans against a dusty piece of furniture. With grim determination, she begins her search for answers among her mother's things. She finds a diary, remembering her mother's words. To remember, to convey, I decided to write a diary. Reading through the pages, she recalls how the diary had once given her so much comfort. She realizes her mother's true lesson. To win hearts, one must understand what people truly desire and use it as a weapon. She laments that she nearly died without ever wielding the weapon her mother left her. Her thoughts return to the Marquise's vile plan to poison her with Flarin during the wedding toast. She recalls her mother's habit of eavesdropping when the Marquise dismissed his staff to discuss secrets. As she remembers her mother writing, a crucial piece of information comes to mind: Flarin poison. She frantically flips through the diary, remembering she read about it in her mother's notes. The diary entry states that Flarin poison is easily obtained from gypsies, who rarely give away the antidote. While doctors might have the antidote, asking for it would immediately raise suspicion. Alone in her room, she realizes her mother must have faced the same impossible choice, with no one to trust. She briefly wonders if she could trust Duke Myers with this information. No, she quickly dismisses the idea, knowing it would be a disaster if the Marquis found out she knew his plan. Clutching the diary to her chest, she reaffirms her mother's final lesson: trust no one. But she's done with just surviving. It's time to turn this crisis into an opportunity. Meanwhile, Duke Grayson Myers sits alone, calmly reading the latest news. He glances at an old photograph of himself, remembering the absurd headline, "The Prince Cursed by the Witch." It was all from a match he was forced to throw. A painful memory surfaces of having to make Crown Prince Cassius look good at his own expense. He remembers playing the fool, unable to hide his frustration, the exact moment that cursed photo was taken. And just like that, he laments, a moment of weakness becomes front-page news. Staring at his shattered reflection, he wonders what it will take to be safe, even contemplating death to end it all. But then, a vision of Edith, radiant and determined,
flashes in his mind. He watches her from a distance as she walks purposefully through the grand hall. The sunlight catches her fiery hair as she heads towards the library. He can't tell if she's lost in thought or just in a hurry, but he's captivated. He realizes he didn't notice it before, but her unbound hair flows behind her like a spark. He impulsively reaches for the door to follow her.
She pauses, turning back for a moment before disappearing inside, leaving him in the doorway.
Inside the vast library, Edith immediately gets to work, searching for a specific book. She's on a mission. Find even the smallest scrap of information about Flaren poison. She sits down, engrossed in her reading, unaware that someone is watching her. Gasp! Suddenly, a tiny voice startles her, asking if she's interested in herbs. Whirling around in shock, she stammers, "Who are you?" A handsome man with long black hair and glasses smiles down at her, a mysterious yet friendly presence.